Welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. I'm Brad Thompson. I'm joined by Ryan Dutton. Ryan, today we're going to put some real life case studies to the test. We're going to talk about how to reclaim your health for the first time. So we really want this episode to come across as if we're talking to this person directly, which is going to be someone who has never really taken charge of their health and their fitness. And if you are this person, how you can start, but we've got some real life examples how we can get people started.
Absolutely. I think that we've had a lot of clients come to us in the past and they've never been involved in sports as kids. They've never been to the gym. They've not been involved in any kind of health and fitness related stuff. It's all a bit foreign to them. They may have prioritised other things in life, whether that's career, family, a combination of the two. We want to kind of shed some light on what we think are the priorities when you first start that journey, how best to kind of go about optimising those initial stages. Obviously some practical tips and advice along the way, and then like I said, a case study of maybe someone we've coached who's been in a similar position, who we think you might be able to draw some inspiration and advice from.
Exactly that, and I do think it'll be really insightful. But you mentioned family there. We like to do a bit of a catch up on these podcasts. How's the family, mate?
Really good. Yeah, I mentioned to you just before we came on that I'm becoming less of Harlow's number one favourite at the moment, which is a bit disheartening as a dad. She's going through a bit of a mummy phase at the moment where she's not really that fussed with me. When she's crying and she's getting a bit aggy, she's wanting Amy all the time. But I've been reassured by other parents who've got girls that this is a phase. She will become a full-on daddy's girl eventually. But yeah, it's an adjustment, I would say.
Yeah, amazing. And yeah, it does happen.
Well, yeah, how about you?
It's good. Ted's going through the phonics stage right now. You can tell there's a big emphasis at nursery about how to pronounce words. And like, for example, Teddy, he struggles with his S's a little bit. With his F's. So he says S instead of F. Right. So the word flag is fantastic.
Yeah. Makes total sense.
Yeah. It's not good, mate. It's not good. But no, apart from that, he just picks up on little words that he thinks funny. There's a book that I'm reading him and it said the word slob in it, and he like paused really comically and he was like slob. I like really pronounced it, and he just kept repeating it, and so he keeps doing that. He picks up on words and he's trying to break them down now, which is cool. But you have to be careful what you say.
It's great to see that cognition, isn't it, when they start to improve the things they say. In fact, Harlow's done something very similar recently where she's gone from saying yeah, and now she says yes. Yes. Everything's with this like, very pronounced S at the end, which is very strange.
Chrissy Eubank style.
Yeah, really. Chrissy Eubank. I've won many fat, lot many fat. That's my terrible Chris Eubank impression.
No, it's going to go down history, that one.
And so she's saying these like very crisp S's at the end, which I have no idea where they've come from. I never say yes. I always say yeah. So it hasn't come from me. Don't think it's come from Amy. Probably from nursery and places like that. Yeah. And
then quick one on training, mate. Shout out to you for your 30k.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a big weekend. Still recovering as we speak. 30k on the hills. On my post online, I put in the wilderness because it basically was some sections. We were just in a field, like a farmer's field, on the edge of a hill, and like, where the hell are we? Are we even on the right path here? And I'm looking on Strava on my little route, going, well, there is a path, and you can see a very kind of, when you go into a field, sometimes it's just full of like tall grass, and there's a very thin path that's gently been laid by just a couple of people earlier that day or that week. There was so many moments where you're going through just thinking, I'm not even sure we're on the right path here. And by far the toughest, most brutal run I've done so far. It was joints. I mean, I rolled my ankle twice. Knees were really feeling at the end. Had to get a knee sleeve on. They're very unforgiving, the hills and the trails out in the peaks. But great to be pushed. Like again, I say it every week, I'm just pinching myself that I can still do these things and still get out there, and I'm not getting real bad backlash from the joints. My knees are still okay. Rolled my ankle a couple of times, but that kind of recovered. It's a weird one. I rolled it really badly on probably in the first 5k. I was thinking this could stop me, this, and then you just keep running and you're running and you have a little stop maybe like 20k down the line and you're like, oh, why's my ankle hurting? Oh, we haven't rolled it 20k ago. So you kind of just keep going through these injuries and through the pain initially, and it kind of just dissipates. But like I said, no pushback today, just soreness in like an achiness rather than like real bad joint pain, I would say. But yeah, it was good, really good. Enjoyed it. Went out with my brother, and I went out with another client, Dan, who we've had on before. He's becoming a little bit of a savage at the moment. He's enjoying the runs and obviously training for this high rocks, so it is kind of all systems go at the moment. Yeah, it's good.
Good.
How's your training?
It's good. It's good. CrossFit's absolutely battering me.
I've seen some decent benches going on.
It's good, mate. And do you know what? I really like how it's programmed. I'm not going to lie. I love the strength-based stuff. And they sort of like reverse engineer it a little bit. So you can see, like yesterday's session, for example, were power snatch and snatch grip deadlift for like the two main strength stuff. But the warm-up sort of, it like reverse engineered those two movements. And I really like it. It's really smart. And shout out to James Coppin as well, who does all that stuff, because I think he's a genius.
Great.
I really like how he sees it. But the WODs at the end are just grim. Like, oh man, I feel like I've nearly died like twice already this week. Just not good. But
you look back on this in a few months' time and go, oh, I remember when that one was really tough, and now it feels okay.
Yeah.
And that progression is really nice to see.
It's even the skills like the Olympic lifting. I've dabbled in it before, but doing it, repetitively in a really effective way. Like they're teaching us how to like cycle barbells at the moment, which is hard. It's almost like a kettlebell swing, but in a snatch, if that makes sense. So if you're doing like a power snatch or a muscle snatch, it's hard.
Okay.
It's really hard, but if you get the rhythm right, you go, okay, I've got this now.
Yeah.
And I know that's a big criticism from a lot of people, like high rep Olympic lifting, that can shatter your shoulders in, but what can also shatter your shoulders in is crap technique.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you have a technique focus like what they do at CrossFit Callum, you should be all right.
We can preach all day about bad technique, but you pick most people in the in the weights room and they're bench pressing wrong, they're overhead pressing wrong, squatting wrong. So people that want to pick on other sports for their exercises and techniques not being right generally have to look a bit more internal sometimes. And every sport has that, but I've really seen you enjoying this. It's nice to kind of see you taking to CrossFit and just pushing the boundaries a little bit more. It seems like it's giving you a bit of a lease on life in your training.
It's good. It's just nice. It's novel for me, and it's given me something to adapt to. Yeah, which is fun. It's intense, and it's I can't see myself always training that way, but being able to sprinkle in that intensity is
cool.
Nice.
So how does the session work? It's like the technique stuff, it's the barbell stuff, and then you go and do like your WODs.
So they basically, it's very similar to how we used to do classes over at Firehouse Fitness, where you stand in front of the group, you run through what the session is, then you say, right, big group warm up, and you know that it's breaking down every movement in the session, what's going to happen. So you establish the skill, and then they say, right, is the strength portion. So there used to be a class at Firehouse called Firepower, which I used to love programming because it was basically just this style of training. Yeah, where you sort of got 2 strength lifts, and they might say, right, every 90 seconds we're going to do 3 reps for 4 rounds. And even just that, like the intensity it's tough, even though you're doing strength stuff. But it gives you enough chance to recover. But
there's an emphasis on like we're not resting for long periods of time. This is not powerlifting. This is take as little as you need, and then we're back in.
Depends what you're doing. Like if it is rep max stuff, then fair. But if it's like something fast and explosive, like a snatch, you almost sometimes perform better under fatigue because you don't overthink it. So
you also don't go into this state of like going a little bit soft in between sets, and you're fresh with it. And when you've done something quite right or even quite wrong, it stays in your mind. And if you leave it too long, you forget that thing. So getting back in there straight away is really good. Yeah.
Whereas the WOD stuff is tough. Like it's like they just have nightmares and write them down. That's what it feels like. Okay. But no, there's a reason why it surged in popularity a few years ago, and just good community, good people there. So
I think there's that if exposure to the kind of top end level as well, and you're surrounded by guys who are getting ridiculous times, there's like a benchmark, and there's a bit of right, I want to keep going at this until I'm at their level, and it's nice to be exposed to that early on, I guess, for some of the guys who are new to CrossFit, maybe like yourself. Yeah, and you've got to shelve the ego a little bit. Like I've picked things up quite fast, but you do have to be really careful, to not try and keep up with some of the mountains in there. I've got a client recently, Ollie, who's joined CrossFit Braze, is it? And I was saying, like, what is the standard like? Is there anyone who's like just head and shoulders above everyone else, whether it is like the performance or how they look as well? I was just really intrigued. And he goes, there was one guy who comes in first day, Sandhurst, backpack on, so he's coming straight out of the military. He's got an unbelievable level of fitness, and whips his top off, rippling 6-pack abs, blokes just smashing it all over, and you're like, okay, that's the level, that's the standard right there. That's it. But no, it's inclusive. Yeah, it's good. Good. Yeah, I've always liked that about CrossFit. It's just there's different levels to it, and I think it caters to a lot of different people, for sure. 100%. Yeah, but I suppose scaling it back a little bit now for someone who wants to reclaim their health, for the first time.
Yeah. I mean, as far as case studies go, just to give, I suppose, the audience a bit of an idea, have you got someone who you've trained prior? Keep anonymous if you want, or it's fine.
Yeah, I think I think a good place to start with this would be maybe like going over what we think are the first initial kind of stages. And I think it's probably best we start with why most people fail. Like, why do most people who start that journey and trying to get the ball rolling, get into exercise, eating well, combine all the pieces, why do they fail? I think we can learn a lot from that. And the biggest single factor as to why people fail is it's unsustainable, essentially. That is the nuts and bolts of it. You can blame it on a lot of different things, excuses, reasons why things came in, lifestyle factors, but usually the main thing is what you're doing isn't going to work in the long term. They go too hard too soon. Sometimes it's too many changes all at once. Sometimes it's being too excessive with one thing, i.e. dieting too hard, burning out from an intense training schedule. And therefore, the best approach when you start your weight loss journey is simply to make small but sustainable changes. Play the long game, essentially. Which for a lot of people, myself included, is actually quite hard. Because I'm generally an all or nothing kind of person. I'm either all guns blazing, I'm like, I want to make as many changes as possible and go as far as possible in this time frame while my mind's in the right place. Or I'm like, fuck it, I'm not even going to attempt that. I'm literally in those two camps and I can kind of make my decision quite quickly. So slowing it down and playing for that long game is definitely the best approach. But if you want the forever results, if you want to make that change and permanently, you have to have those lifestyle changes stick and those habits stick. And that's where a lot of people, I think, go wrong. It's too many changes at once. It's too many things going on, too many pieces of the puzzle they're trying to mash together. I personally think the slower approach is much better for sure.
Could not have said it better myself. And picking up on what you said about like too much too soon, if you do change too much too soon, you don't really know what's worked. So you could be doing something that's completely pointless and it's really hard, but you think it's worked because you've done it in tandem with like 2 or 3 other things. From experience, mate, do you find this a lot with new clients in particular? So I always say to people, when we first start, I don't want you to change anything for like at least a week, let me see how you live, or I try and do this before I actually sit down with them and sign them up potentially. Bring in a bit of a food diary, let me know what you currently do, training perspective. Don't tell me what I want to hear. Yeah. Tell me what you currently do. And then you can start to break it down.
Yeah, we do all those things for sure. Like food diary is an essential thing. It's you are what you eat essentially. So I want to know what people are having and how that's affecting their training, how they're feeling, where the main key issues lie there. But also, a lot of people will come onto the program on the flip side in the first few stages, and they'll make everything work for whatever reason. They do. I'm asking them to change so many different things about their lifestyle, from the way they eat, to the way they move, to the way they train, to their sleep, to their nutrition. I guess that's obviously in the way they eat, their supplements. There's so many factors involved in this. And to make everything stick in the first few weeks is very hard. Some people do, but it's quite rare. Some people will get nowhere near. So their water might be great, but their eating's crap. Yeah. They might crack the nutrition, but their training just is a non-starter. There's always an issue, a main issue with each person. And for me, in the first few weeks, it's about highlighting, right, what is this person really going to struggle with? Let's take nutrition, for example. Let's say they're fine with the walks. Let's say they're fine with the training. They love all that, but they just can't make the nutrition stick. Right, that's where we're going to put all the focus and attention. And that's where we're really going to kind of hone in on. And most people will find that there's things that you adopt very easily and quickly, and there's things that will take a little bit more time. Don't fall into that camp as well of rewarding yourself for the things that are really easy. I see this a lot as well. So someone will come in and immediately, and we have our check-in each week, they'll go, Ryan, I've had an awesome week. Nutrition's been great. I hit all my water. Had all my vitamins and minerals, been fantastic. They never struggle with this, by the way. And they go, but I didn't do any of my walks, I haven't done any training sessions, but the nutrition, honestly, has been great. I've been like, cool. We said the same thing last week, and I said the same thing the week before. So you are really honing in, you personally are honing in on the things that you are really not struggling with. Nutrition's fine for you. You're hitting all your numbers, you're hitting all your macros, calories, water's great. that isn't our focus now. All the eggs now have to go in the basket of walking, moving more, and actually lifting some weights. And it's about being very, again, honest with yourself and saying, where am I struggling and where do I need to put all those eggs?
Good shout. Yeah, really good shout. And it makes you wonder sometimes, like, going back to, I suppose, not changing anything at all. Like, some people just introducing lifting some weights. They could not be that far off. And all of a sudden, you don't change anything apart from you're good at gym 2 or 3 times a week and it doesn't obliterate you. I think that in particular is going to be really useful because, you know, as long as your protein or hydration's there or thereabouts, that on its own can make such a big impact. But like you said, if you focus on the big hitters, I just want to pick up on something you said, which were all or nothing mentality, which I know is quite common in people who maybe have struggled to reclaim like their health in the past, or they've never successfully had to take control of their health. There's a really good analogy about plates. I don't know if you've heard this one before, which is, imagine if you just drop a plate from your cupboard and it smashes. Right? A really silly person would grab every plate out of the cupboard and just smash them all, rather than just accepting that plate's gone and then get another plate and just move on. I think that in particular is quite a good analogy for the all or nothing. Like, if you decide, oh, sod it, game over, I'll just go back to square one, you may as well smash all your plates.
It's a great analogy for when things go wrong, that isn't it? Like, if something goes wrong, not just throwing all the toys out the pram and saying, that's it, right, I'm done and dusted. I think a lot of people, and I see it with some clients who come into the program, and they might drop quite a significant amount of weight early doors, and that sometimes is a bit of a red flag for me, because I can see where they were, I can see the issues they struggled with, and I can see where they are now, and it's a million miles when I'm like, wow, that is a big change that, like, in their lifestyle. And I can immediately see, like, right, they weren't walking at all, now they're doing like 90 minutes every day along with gym sessions, and they're kind of factoring in walking with like the family, they're going for a cycle at the weekend with the mates. There's a lot of things changing that weren't there before, and it's like a ticking time bomb. How long is that going to last before you burn out, get sick of it, probably stop seeing as much weight loss because you've gone so hard and there's no real progression, there's no other tools we can pull on in the toolbox. It really is about longevity, and that happens as well, like touching on the toolbox analogy. We want to get the maximum amount of results from the minimum amount of effort. That for me initially is the main goal. You only have to do a little amount and your body will start. If you just change the fact that you walk every day for 30 minutes without even changing your food, the chances are you might just put yourself into a bit of a deficit. That alone, and great, that's all we're going to pull on. Then maybe the week after we then start pulling the calories back a little bit. Maybe the week after we start introducing some some better quality of food. There's so many little things along the way that are just going to take us to that next level and the next level. But some people go from 0 to level 50 in the space of a couple of weeks. And that's where, okay, once we get to level 50, where are we going to go from there? And there's not really much progression. They're already in a big restrictive calorie deficit. They're already now walking an hour every day. They're training 5 times a week quite intensely. There's no progression from that. We can get the same kind of results often with a lot less of the work.
So I had to just check behind me then, see if there was a mirror, because as you were talking about what's the minimum you can do, I literally typed what's the minimum. So I'm like, that's a bit weird. I think I'm glad that you said that about what's the minimum and people making a lot of change in the short term. I always say to people, like, right, how many sessions do you think you can commit to? And if they're eager, there might be like 4 or 5. And I'm like, all right, I want you to imagine you've got a really busy week at work. If they've got kids, like one of the kids is off school sick, what's that week look like? They went, probably 2 sessions a week. I'm like, well, let's go for 2 first. Let's get 2 done. And then let's start gradually layering on top. Like, if you can do 2 sessions a week, amazing. Then we can start adding more. But I think a lot of people shoot like really big. And then when they fall short, it's like, but they've still done 2 sessions. It's like a weird mindset shift that
you want to flip that thinking and go, right, what's the minimum I expect to do every week? And that's what I've got to commit to. Anything else is a bonus. Rather than going, right, we're going to start at 4, and if you only get 2, well, you're a piece of shit, basically. And I think people have that mindset, don't they, where, I think that's a great way of planning it out, having the worst weeks as the benchmark every week. And then building from there.
That's not accepting mediocrity, by the way. Like, I've had this discussion with someone before, and they sort of said, so you're encouraging people to be mediocre? I'm like, no, I'm encouraging people to prepare for the worst, because life throws the worst at you sometimes. and then adjusting your expectations accordingly. Like,
there's nothing mediocre.
No.
I hate that phrase. Like, if you're even changing something very small about your routine in a positive way, that's taking you away from mediocre straight away. If mediocre is you being out of shape, doing nothing, not looking after your food, not moving, and immediately you just start moving every day,
Yep.
well, you've moved away from that. That's less mediocre than it was before. Might not be optimal, but again, this is the point. We're not going for optimal in week one. We're not going for the best routine imaginable. We're going for baby steps every week and introducing things nice and slow. So like I said, it's sustainable, it sticks, and we're thinking long term. Long term, I can't stress that in the first few months that you are training, that it's something you can do forever. If you're getting a month in and you're like, this is crazy, like when is this over? Then it's probably too intense. No, correction, it's definitely too intense. Now, the flip side to that is, I guess, some people will start on a program and the goal is a 12-week program, right? And they've got 12 weeks to get in shape. Number one, I wouldn't recommend this for anyone who is new to training. I think if you're not comfortable in the gym and if you're not used to training, you haven't played sports, you've not got that baseline level of knowledge when it comes to training, I would not recommend a 12-week program at all. Start steady. If you're someone who's relatively well trained, which we are going to do a follow-up podcast on, there may be something like, right, I've got 12 weeks, let's just go for it, see where I can get to, kind of thing. Set some time frames. That might be a good impetus to be like, right, I'm not messing around here. I've got a bit of a time frame, and it might give you that kick up the arse.
Yeah.
But for the person looking to reclaim their health for the first time in their life, whether that is post-pregnancy, whether it is, just anyone really, parents, single people, busy professionals, people who've got all the time in the world, sustainability.
One thing probably all them people have got in common is they probably all hold a certain set of beliefs, if you know what I mean, whether it's something that, what do they believe they need to do to be healthy? And I use this analogy a lot, but if you were to stop people in the street, they'd probably be able to tell you what they need to do to be healthy. Like a very high percentage would be able to tell you that, but they all sort of hold different existing beliefs. So I think our job right now, and probably why we did this, why we decided to actually start the podcast, is to try and challenge people's beliefs. Like, well, why do you believe that? You know, have you considered it this way? So anyone who is taking the effort to actually listen to this is willing to have their beliefs challenged. So, like, for example, one of my case studies that I brought today, huge advocate for, like, Slimming World in the past, or Weight Watchers and that sort of stuff. Like, not to bash those, but their existing belief is that food comes with points and sins and that sort of stuff, which challenging that belief and trying to give them a little bit more freedom and flexibility is a hard one to break down. So people being aware that, I suppose before we go into some more concrete, here's what you can do if you are wanting to reclaim your health, I think maybe some real world examples of people who maybe have come out the other side would be
I think we're going to go into some case studies now, maybe some clients that we've worked with that have really hit home with this and made it work, had some issues, ups and downs, and how I've overcome them. Do you want to start with yours, Brad?
I can do. I've not asked permission to share this, so I'm going to call them Client E.
Okay.
All right. Just that big sort of experience in Slimming World in the past, got the results, and I think the go-to is always that's their set point, to go back to that. But I would question, and that was one thing that we said, is it actually working? Because you keep coming back to it. There's a reason why you have to keep coming back to it, because you keep rebounding. So that was, for them, great for some people, not great for this client in particular. Found himself quite obsessed with scale weight a little bit. For a bit more context, 30 years old, there was 6 months postpartum when they first come to me, and the turning point was they wanted to be fit and well for the daughter, essentially. And they spoke to one of their friends, they'd started lifting weights, and the friend, in their words, just looked banging. And they were like, what have you done? Yeah. And they said, well, I've started lifting weights and I'm eating like 2,000 calories now. And, Client E expressed that to me and they were like, I want to do that. I'm probably eating 2,000 calories now, but I'm stacking weight on. Yeah. How is she doing that? So trying to educate them on that process was tough. And for us, for Client E, there was a lot of belief challenging. That was hard. And they'll be the first one to tell you that I was quite not harsh with my questioning, very sympathetic, but you had to challenge it. Like, well, has that worked for you in the past, or are you happy with how that's going? And just challenging them, going for the big hitters. First things for us were hydration and protein. That were absolutely shocking. Sleep quality, we're having a 6-month-old. Not great either. So we
never going to be great, though.
No. But we had to look at the sleep quality where the quantity maybe lacked, and telling them that was an option, and that if you don't get 8 hours, not ideal, but let's do what we can. That were a complete game changer for them. So once those 3 big things, hydration, sleep, and protein, were smashed, then we got a lot of momentum.
Cool.
And then that's when results started kicking in, really.
Brilliant.
But,
I think that's a great. It's probably a classic case of someone who, again, just sees someone, a friend, family member, is inspired by it, is intrigued by it, wants to know how it's possible. And again, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just implementing very basic, simple things into people's lives that go a long way. And there's always going to be that personal touch, whether it is like the sleep, that's what they're struggling with. Maybe, again, just coming back to highlighting and focusing on the things that you really struggle with. For a lot of people, that is protein count. Like, just increasing protein is really hard, because you get up in the morning, the first thing you're thinking is cereal, Rice Krispies.
Yep.
Fruit, for example. You're not thinking protein. No one really is, unless you're into this kind of stuff and you understand it. Lunchtime, same again. Like, it's not the first thing on the menu. You're thinking, right, am I having a sandwich? Am I having a pasta dish? Am I having, I don't know, some rice bowl?
Yep.
You're not thinking, is there going to be protein in that? Flipping that kind of thought process and kind of almost like having protein as your focal point in every meal, that then starts to change how hungry people are during the day, how satiated they feel, just how much they progress in terms of muscle mass, hormonal system, endocrine system. All those things get a big boost when that protein is nice and high. So if that's something you struggle with, that is a big, big factor and a big port of call, I would say, when you first start your process.
Which, like I said about Client E, it was all about momentum. We wanted to build them momentum, we wanted to get them quick wins on the board and change what yardstick we were measuring as well. Like, one thing we didn't really track or tried to avoid was scale weight, because this person's perspective was, I'm going to step on them scales and people are going to either applaud or give me sympathy. And I sort of wanted to detach from that a little bit and to say to them, right, that's not what we're bothered about right now. We're bothered about getting some healthy habits for your daughter. We're bothered about getting you momentum. So let's measure that instead. And we had many a chat where they'd just jump on the scales just out of habit, and they'd be like, oh, my weight's not changed, or oh, it's gone up today. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm thinking that. I obviously didn't say that to them as bluntly,
of course,
but it's not the most important thing right now. Like, we've discussed, you've bought into this. I appreciate that those beliefs are going to keep pecking away at you, but let's step away from that a little bit.
I think that's one of the most important things you've mentioned today is the weight, and people getting caught up on that, and they put so much of their success in this kind of journey down to the weight, like almost to the point where if it's not going down and if it's static, or even if it is regressing some weeks, the whole process is void. Like, it's not worth doing. There's no point me trying anymore, because the weight's not moving. There's no point me doing these things. There's no point me improving my habits. There's no point me improving my sleep, my food, my trading, my movement. None of it's worth it, because I'm not moving in the weight. And that is a completely wrong way of looking at it. You've got to have more foresight and say, actually, these things will add up over time. I've just got to make sure that I'm prioritising the right things in my mind.
And Client E used what she thought was a pretty good analogy about bow and arrow, where you sort of pull the string back to go forward again. But I'm like, you're not even pulling the string back. I'm like, you're just moving forward all the time. It depends if you want to see it that way. There are times where you have to pull people back to project them forward. That's what she believed she was doing, and I'm like, you're not pulling back here. You're moving forward in a really positive direction. So showing them that those actions weren't meaningless was probably the biggest challenge. But after a bit, the training, that's when everything comes together.
I think I've just had a bit of an analogy there. It's a bit like the client's in a maze, right? And they're in the maze and they can't see it. And the coach is stood at an aerial view above the maze looking down. And you can see where that client's heading. You can see the changes they're making. Okay, cool, we just keep going on this path and you will get to the middle of this maze. And then, but the client's in it, they're in the maze, they can't see a way out. They're like, no, I just can't see any steps forwards. I'm not progressing. Am I even getting closer? What's going on? But we've done this process with so many thousands of people that we know the process. We know when someone's on the right path. And I think having a coach, sometimes, as I've mentioned in this process, can be really beneficial, because it's just that voice of reason. It's having that aerial view, that not being caught up in the moment, in that kind of Monday morning when you get on the scales and you've had a great weekend and you said no to the wines and you've said no to the takeaways and everyone else has been really bad and you've been really good, and all of a sudden you jump on the scales and it's not where you want to be. It's in that moment having the foresight to not throw your toys out the pram and actually be like, okay, I can still do this. It's an off day. Maybe the scales are wrong. Maybe it's a bit of water weight. Having the right people in your corner potentially geeing you up and saying, just keep going. You've got this.
Well said. I love that maze analogy. For some reason, I thought of David Bowie in Labyrinth. I don't know why. As soon as you said the maze, I'm like, oh shit.
That wasn't where my mind went.
No, it did me.
My mind went to horror movies, really.
No, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Like, if we're telling the client to turn right and they go, no, I'm going to turn left. And I'm like, I'm telling you, if you turn left, you're either going to get lost or you're going to have to turn back around. I think that's great, mate. I like that one. Yeah,
it just came to me as you were saying it then, because it's like they've got blinkers on, but we can see the bigger picture. We can always see the bigger picture. We know, when you've taken so many people through this process, you know what to look out for in terms of when someone's on the right path and when the results are actually going to come and when they're not. Shall I go to
Go for yours.
My case study? So, a lady called Alex, I'm going to name her by name because I posted her transformation online anonymously. She had a blurred face and no one will ever be able to identify her. So it's all good. She was a recent first-time mum. She came to me, same as your client, 6 months postpartum. Aside from a bit of yoga, she had never really done any other type of exercise. She'd never been a member at a gym, never done any classes, never played any sports, even in her youth. She was particularly unadventurous when it came to movement and exercise. I think she enjoyed the yoga because it was quite calming and relaxing. She was a complete newbie to all things health and fitness in every aspect of the word, really. She had gained what she called a bit of post-pregnancy podge. And I always remember something she said to me actually in our first conversation together. She said, I feel guilty for saying this, but I just want to look good, feel good, and do this for me. Which actually made me feel quite disheartened, because she felt guilty for simply wanting to be a more confident version of herself, which, it's quite sad, really. I think this guilt came from being away from her child and worrying that maybe she wasn't giving her child the attention that they should have. But she had this thing inside that said, I want to be better. I want to, my body's changed post-pregnancy. I can feel myself getting a little bit weaker. You do as a mum. Oftentimes it can be quite physically demanding walking around with a child, but it's also, you spend a lot of hours sat down. And I think she felt like she was not only putting on some weight, but also becoming less strong and definitely less confident in her body. Alex's biggest hurdle was the fact that she had quite major anxiety around the gym. She was petrified to start with, for lack of a better word. She would actually sit in her car for half an hour sometimes before she walked in there, and often she would just drive home. She would, of course, find reasons not to train, or even just train from home, which we both knew were basically just excuses. And she knew she had to train at the gym, but she was finding ways out of that, just not being in that environment. The way we got around this was by slowly desensitizing her to that environment. It starts with simply spending more time in the gym environment and doing things that she feels very comfortable with in that environment. Treadmill, bike, cross trainer, equipment she felt like she could do and she wouldn't embarrass herself on. And because that was quite a big fear of hers, going into the gym and, probably ending up on one of these gym fail videos that we see online of someone really not knowing what to do. It then moved on to weight-based machines, so like your kind of typical, your seated leg curl, hamstring extension, hamstring curls, seated leg extensions, leg press, things that then she felt like she could do without, again, messing up too much, but working a few muscles. And then over time, obviously, as she got more confident, we then progressed this into free weight stuff. But that process of jumping from machine-based stuff to free weight stuff comes with its own challenges, because now you're having to coach someone through an unstable weight, a very peculiar piece of equipment that can go very wrong. So We had she was actually trained here 1-to-1 at the time as well. So in our sessions alongside all this, we were obviously working on a technique and how to lift and ingraining some really good movement patterns there. I think she had this kind of obviously big goal of, you know, shifting the podge, feeling firmer, being stronger, having that confidence back in her body. And once she kind of overcome that gym fear and the guilt of being away from her little one, she really ran with it. And it was lovely to see that process of someone who was, you know, not only a newbie to the gym, but genuinely kind of was petrified of it, to now being someone who would go in there, do a deadlifts, get a platform, do some squats, no fear of getting on the bench press and going in some bench press with the guys. And she actually, just before she finished her program here at R5, joined a CrossFit gym, as we were mentioning. So she went kind of from full newbie to pretty much, I wouldn't say pro, but confident enough to go and hold her own in a CrossFit gym, which, as we know, can be quite intimidating for newbie people.
I think you might have shared Alex's story prior in terms of some capacity, so I'm familiar with what you're saying, and I think we compared it before to like exposure therapy, which is amazing, mate. And I think a lot of people don't see it that way. They probably don't see, okay, I've got all these major anxieties, and even just saying that and verbalizing it, it's probably credit to you as a coach for them and being able to say it and be so honest, because they're not just saying, well, I can't do this because of this. They've said, I'm struggling to do this because of this, can you help me? And I think that's something that anyone listening who maybe wants to reclaim their health, that's such a big mindset shift to make. Asking for help so hard, especially when you're going to someone who you know is quite well versed in the gym, someone who does this a lot. And it might be one of the reasons why people don't go to a coach initially and they try and do it themselves and maybe go through those many stumbling blocks because they're just a bit nervous about going to someone and embarrassing themselves. I've had it so many times, I'm sure you're the same, where people come into sessions and they're very nervous and you can tell, and they say, Ryan, I'm really worried about embarrassing myself, not only in the gym, but actually in front of me. And my first thing is I'm never here to judge anyone. You know, if you're someone who's phenomenally fit and you're at a high level, okay, how can we get to that next level? If you're at stage 1, level 1, how do we get to stage 2? And if that is simply just going into the gym and doing things that are completely off program, like we were doing so many things in the early stages of Alex's program that probably weren't really beneficial to her initially. Like, I didn't really want to go on the cross train. Not that I'm not a big fan of it. I just think there's other better ways of training. I think she could have definitely been using her time more effectively to go and do some conditioning circuits, raise the heart rate, work on a multitude of different muscle groups in a shorter period of time. But that wasn't the goal. She would have hated that. She would have felt really uncomfortable doing that. The biggest step forwards was literally just going and picking a piece of kit, any kit, I said to her, that you feel comfortable on, and then just get used to being in that environment. Have yourself in the gym, people watching, in the kind of presence of other people who are pushing themselves, and that then, again, just builds that confidence slowly over time. Everything you've said there, I just think it's brilliant. I think the way that you've dealt with this client and, I don't know, just created that relationship as well, where they can be so open and honest. And I mentioned my consultation process a little bit prior to this. I always ask people, have you been through a coaching experience before? If they say no, I always like to ask them when I see them, like, right, what are your expectations? What do you think that we do as coaches? And it's always interesting to hear what people say. They think it's very like drill sergeant, you know, they're just going to make you sore so you can't walk. And actually, when you break it down and go, I appreciate you telling me that, because I can assure you it doesn't have to be that if you don't want it to be. Our default's probably not that anyway. No. Our default's very much meet this person where they're at, make sure they can function tomorrow, you know, so they're not going to take a day off work. So it probably is just breaking down those, I don't know, peeling back the curtain a little bit. I've always said a great aspect of a good coach is be like a bit of a chameleon. So you can go from one session, 1 minute, to coaching a very high standard athlete, to then next session you're getting a complete newbie, and you're not making either one feel like they're out of place, not diminishing the session, not making the session too easy for the athlete, not making it too hard for the newbie. It's about programming right and having that kind of, you know, I think experience as well of working with so many people that means that you can just deal with anyone essentially. Yes, you know, maybe you want to kind of niche and
go down certain routes eventually. But I think if you're a person now who's thinking about maybe getting coaching, or someone who wants to kind of start this journey off on the right foot, I think finding someone who has that level of experience is really important. People who, I think social media is great for this. You get a vibe from people on social media, don't you? Maybe someone in your local area who talks quite well, maybe someone who is just on your level and understands the kind of the average Joe. I think there are a lot of clients I've coached as well who've come to me and they said, "Oh, I had this coach X, Y, and Z, and I've not heard them. I'll check them out, go on there," and they're just contest prep people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that was a bad move straight away, because that person's dealing with people who are getting on stage. They might do sometimes they'll have contest prep, photo shoot, and lifestyle. Now, lifestyle is everyone basically. Contest prep and photo shoot, people who are looking to get super shredded.
Yeah.
Those are two opposite ends of the spectrum, essentially. And when you're looking at someone who's getting on stage for a bodybuilding competition, those people are very driven, very motivated, bit robotic, happy to eat kind of very similar things, very restrictive in what they do, and usually have got a date, like we said, they've probably got a 12, 16, 24 week gauge of where they want to be. We shouldn't be setting those same gauges as a new person into kind of health, fitness, reclaiming, as we said, your health. I think this is all about not setting time frames, really restrictive time frames. It's about, again, picking a coach maybe who can actually get you past those first few hurdles in terms of barriers in mindset, barriers in lifestyle, barriers in habits. That's where your eggs want to lie, as opposed to going straight in, balls to the wall with a drill sergeant style coach who's like, right, if you're not in your macros, you're not going to get where you want to be, so lump it or leave it kind of thing.
Exactly. One phrase I come across a few weeks ago is information versus knowledge. Information's everywhere, knowledge is hard to find. And knowledge can be hard to find if you look in the wrong places. If you're just taking on information, whether it's free information or information from TikTok, wherever, it's information, but are you retaining that? Are you putting it to use? Is it personalized? I've always found the knowledge that sticks with people is usually personalized. Anytime someone's given me anything personalized, from a coaching cue, from life advice, career advice, it's always stuck with me, because they've listened to me, they've listened to where I'm at, and they tailor what they're saying to me, and I go, okay, that's stuck with me now, because it's knowledge, it's wisdom, it sticks with you.
Yeah, personalised is always the route, for sure. Couldn't agree more with that.
But no, anything else for you, Ryan, to sign off this for someone who is wanting to reclaim the health for the first time?
Like I said, the overriding message in this episode, I think, is long game, sustainability, small changes, not going too hard too soon, sourcing the right people who may be able to help you in the first early stages, who are definitely on your level, and most importantly, enjoying it. That's one thing we've probably skipped over a little bit. This is a process of you becoming better, becoming more confident. That comes with its challenges. It comes with its kind of moments where you hate the world and you're going to hate everything about it. But remember, this is all about you being better as a human being, being more confident, feeling like you are fit, strong, healthy, whether that's for kids or just for you, as it was with Alex. That's what I'll kind of sign this episode off with, really.
I love that. Old coach of mine used to say, on a rainy day, you have to make your own sunshine.
Brilliant. What a great way to end.
And it really did, mate. It stuck with me. But I guarantee there will be people who've listened to this who have either got someone in their mind who thinks, oh, they'd love that. Please send them. Please send them this episode, because it will really help. And I suppose if you are that person who has found it useful, probably going to encourage people to subscribe, Brian, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. We've got some great episodes coming up. We've got some nice guests on the way as well, all lined up. People who've got some great insights into what it takes to, become the best version of yourself. So if you're enjoying the episodes, hit the subscribe button. And other than that, we'll see you guys in the next one.
See you soon.